Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I want to do a fun little discussion talking about competitive decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, or at least fringe, rogue level decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, not top tier stuff, but decks that have alternate win conditions that actually still perform really admirably. Because I think it's just like such an you know, delved into thing by Konami. I think with like FTKs on burn stuff and runic stun being like annoying. I think Konami like tries not to toe that line because they could risk making something too strong and making like a really poor deck for the format. But when they do a good job at making it feel still strictly rogue at best, I still think it can be like a fun part of Yu-Gi-Oh. And as you can see here, this is a list conjured up by Henry. This gentleman right here, he went 8-1-1 at the Philly Regional in January with not necessarily this list. I think this is an edited list that he edited post this when he released another deck profile, but similar to this, at least this idea. While this deck is not about FTKing your opponent, when you go first, you are going to set your opponent up to fail because you're going to put them in a position where it would be very hard for them to play around enough stuff to just not lose to burn. You're going to burn them with Gravedigger's Trap Hole twice, ideally, for 4,000, 1,500 off of Emperor, and very soon after, they will not have much left to play with. So stuff like Malice doesn't stand a chance because they burn themselves already. But anyway, really cool list. I'll leave a link in the description to Henry's channel. I highly recommend it. It's a channel that he doesn't clog your your subscription feed with a ton of hoopla like I do. But when he does post, it's a banger. And when I saw this, very impressive. Yeah, he went 8-1-1 at Philly. By the way, Philly ends up with like huge regionals notoriously. They have like small YCS numbers at their regionals. He went 8-1-1, got ninth place, I believe, and he lost the last round with a game loss in game one because he forgot to side something out. So like if he wins that, he may have been 8-0-1 9-0-1 and undefeated in first place, right? And then it's a whole nother story. And this would have been a much bigger story with a ton more views. He almost had 5,000 views on this video, but could be even more, right? Should be even more, honestly, even just with this. It's just such a cool idea, such a cool deck. And it got me thinking about decks that have the opportunity to take advantage of other win cons. We've seen stuff like Runic, right? With the alternate win con with deck out and stuff. But I want to talk about Trickstar. Trickstar has their new support coming in the next week and a half in, Maze of the Master. And they get a couple new tools that just boost their engine enough, but that combined with some of the attributes that Trickstar has just always had, kind of puts them in an interesting position for me where I'm just like, yes, this deck is probably just outclassed as an engine and what its output is overall by most of the decks in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, but it still is just going to rip free wins for no other reason than it's Trickstar. It just is, right? So I have a couple of things here, and I think there's like 5 different ways this deck can just like auto win a game, kind of. And modern day Yu-Gi-Oh is all about, we get into this resource kind of back and forth. A lot of it's only 1 or 2 turns, really, until a game is kind of decided where it's going. But I do think Trickstar can put you in a position where you don't even mess around with the resource game sometimes. You just put them in a position where it doesn't matter. They could have 10 more cards than you, and you still have a way to push them into game scenarios. So the first one is burn, obviously. That's what Trickstar is known for. And they do a lot of nickel and diming. They don't do a lot of like huge hits to your opponent's life points, but stuff like Light Stage, burning your opponent for 200 bonus damage every time another Trickstar monster burns your opponent. It really stacks up. It makes it so that most of the time you're like 400, 400, 400, 400. And depending on the deck, that can stack up super quickly. They get some other new tools. And this matters because you're not going to burn quite as hard as like the Volcanic deck we just looked at. But you can push your opponent into a corner where they start losing the ability to play the game in certain ways because of how close you can get them to game. For example, the new Link 1 is Kolchika. In Grave, she says like if a Trickstar monster is destroyed by battle, burn your opponent equal to that Trickstar monster's attack. So if you have like Candina on the field and you get your opponent's life points under 2,000 basically, because with Light Stage you get a bonus 200 off of that. Actually, it's only Trickstar monsters you control, so you still have to get them 1,800, but still under 1,800. And now your opponent goes, oh, I can't even remove this without battle. I guess I leave this on the field and pass. And by the way, you can crash your own monsters. So that is now just an available win condition you have if they don't have a response for the Cold Chica, and that's still strong in its own right. So it's just stuff like that. Just not this win con, this alternate win con is not quite as potent as obviously the volcanic version is, but you can still get wins just off of burn. Not only just outright winning with burn, but also don't forget time. This is the kind of deck that should never be losing in time. You have so much access to burning your opponent in just like quick little ways that you should never really be losing in time theoretically. All right, next win con, Trickstar Reincarnation. Reincarnation. This card kind of applies for like two different win cons in my opinion. The first one is obviously the Droll Reincarnation lock, which is insanely broken. It's always been the most broken thing Trickstar had. In its heyday, this was the reason everybody wanted Reincarnation banned. They wanted Droll banned, all this stuff, because the idea is Reincarnation banishes your opponent's entire hand, and then they redraw the same amount of cards as that got banished. Under Droll, though, you can still activate this card, and it just attempts to resolve as much as possible. So your opponent can banish their whole hand under Droll, but they can't redraw because they're under Droll, no drawing. So under Droll, Reincarnation just basically is a full hand rip. Very degenerate, but it is what it is. We have Reincarnation at 3, and this is as searchable as ever. Trickstar is about as consistent as ever, minus 2 terraforming that it had at the beginning. And Droll's at 3. So yeah, this is very, very doable to set this up. The other thing that Reincarnation does that some people won't play around, as well as they might or just might not know what the deal is, but because you can just banish stuff from your opponent's hand, you can hit like one of engine cards. And sometimes it's going to come down to being lucky. And just if you want to fire this on a full hand of 6 when you go first into your opponent, you can. But you can also wait for them to search a clear one of, like a card that you know is going to be a one of. For like if Ryzeal searches the field spell, and that's like an annoying monster negate, it's going to stop you from being able to use a monster interruption you have that might be key. You can wait for them to search it off duo drive and then just shuffle the hand. And now that card's just probably gone for the duel. Same thing with Node, right? And other decks, of course, have their one-ofs as well. It pertains to the specific deck, but that's just another way where sometimes that is enough. That is the nail in the coffin where like you can like cut their engine's potency by like 30% by hitting one card out of it. It's crazy. And that's what Reincarnation can allow you to do sometimes. Obviously, we talked about Droll. The next one is Aqua Angel. This is actually one of the new cards that kind of gives them like another broken aspect of their deck. This card is an extender, pretty just simple basic extender. And if this card's sent to the graveyard as link material, you can look at all cards in your opponent's hand and all set cards they control. Broken. This card does not hand rip for you, but it does about the next best thing, which is you just get full hand knowledge. The only card you shouldn't know after, like when you use this card, is whatever your opponent draws for turn. And as soon as they give you knowledge on that card, you should have perfect information as to what your opponent has access to. So this is one of those things where this card starts to eliminate play around, right? Your opponent playing around certain cards, outsmarting you because you know their whole hand. You know everything they hand. They can't bluff you, right? If they have two hard ones per turn cards and 2 copies of it, you know they have a dead card in hand. So there's no, oh, I'm going to try and, hit him with this and I'm going to make him second guess and be like, oh, I don't want to negate that because he still has 3 cards in hand. Well, no, he only has 2 cards in hand. He might even only have 1, depending on if, he has a hand trap in hand that's dead or whatever. It's really crazy. And so this card, incredibly powerful, and you're just going to win games because you went first and you got to see the hand. Stuff like Nib, to play around Nib when you go through this card, right? Because you just see it and you go, oh, okay, I'm not going to play into Nib like a dummy. We're just going to end on our simple board. You know what I mean? And you just get to see board breakers and just choose to not play into the board breaker as hard. And you just get to win games for free that way. So obviously perfect hand knowledge is broken and can just lead to free wins that otherwise they could have cooked you on because you didn't know how to play into it. And then Chaos Angel. There's the last one. This is an all light deck, and they're all different levels. So this deck can actually get into Chaos Angel with relative ease. Obviously, if you also play either the Fiendsmith engine or the Bestial engine, becomes even easier. You have level 4 lights that you go through consistently. So a level 6 light or dark pairs with that really nicely. And Chaos Angel is just one of those cards. If you make it with a light, as soon as this card hits the field, sometimes it is just game, right? Depending on the deck you play against, because they just will not have an out for it. So, yeah, that's another little bonus one that this deck can take advantage of. But I think all these things kind of pair together, and it's not that any one of these aspects like really makes it like so crazy, but it's just like out of 50 duels, are you going to win 3 duels by burning your opponent to death, 5 duels by burning your opponent to death? Are you going to win 7 duels by droll reincarnating your opponent when you go first? You just you drew droll and your engine got you to reincarnation. You win the duel on the spot, kind of thing. Do you win 2 duels out of 50 because you get to reincarnation a important one of out of your opponent's hand, and now they lose a part of their engine and they just cannot beat you at that point, right? Do you win because how many duels do you win? Do you win 4 duels out of 50 because you just looked at your opponent's hand and you said, wow, I really was about to play in a way where I was going to auto like lose to this hand, but now that I know what you have, I'm not losing a nib, I'm not losing a ultimate slayer, whatever they go for, whatever they have, you're just like, oh, go from there. And then do you win 1 duel out of 50, 2 duels out of 50 by making Chaos Angel against a deck that just cannot handle it? Right? It's not that I think this deck is all that great, but I do think when you add all these like free wins that can just kind of stack on top of each other, you end up boosting your win percentage like actually pretty significantly by the end of looking at that. All of this on top of this, I think like Trickstar is not particularly great engine going second, but if you can play the Kashtira engine, right? Bestials as another engine like that do actually have some potency going second. On top of the fact that the Trickstar engine I've been mocking up in my deck list is between like 13 and 16 cards. That leaves you a ton of space for one, another engine that does help you play going second, and 2, just a million non-engine cards, 20 non-engine cards potentially, 20 plus, even with another engine sometimes. And I think that helps. So even if your engine isn't that crazy, if you're going to draw 3 non-engine cards every duel, you're still going to have a decent chance to go second in this game. So yeah, I think for all those reasons, I think Trickstar is interesting. I don't think it's going to surprise people. Maybe we'll see a couple at regionals for just like old fans of the deck, and maybe we see Bortle come out of the woodwork and get a couple of regional tops with his old favorite deck or something to that effect. But I do think it's still an interesting deck, and if you like it, I actually think you can make it work because nobody is going to see it coming, and you're going to steal some free wins for sure. So there you go. There's kind of my my pitch on Trickstar. If you think they're cool, if you think they're cute, if you like them, pick them up. Pick up the new stuff. I don't think they're going to be too overly expensive. I wouldn't think. Pick them up, mess around with them. I think you can do some stuff with them and actually have some relative success. Not YCS level, but I think regional is doable here. So let me know your thoughts on this down below. We might have a deck profile coming to the channel when these things come out and we play test a little bit and see some success. But me and my buddy Chris, this was his favorite deck of all time. This is his first competitive deck he ever played. We're going to get him back into it and see if he can make this work as a rogue deck. But we'll be back at a later time to talk about that and maybe show off a deck profile. But thanks for watching in the meantime. We should hopefully have more news coming this week. We should have Odeon's archetype getting revealed. Potentially even Canine getting revealed as well, the 3rd Justice Hunter's archetype. And we're getting close to getting into more regular core set reveals with Duelist Advance, hopefully soon. So a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline. I'll keep you tuned on anything Yu-Gi-Oh! News-wise that you need to. And other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.